Let's go. Oh.
That was premature.
I got excited.
You did. What do you got there?
Bang pina colada.
Ooh, pina colada.
Whole lot of pina
Welcome
colada.
to the Grappling With podcast. Dr. Chris Hardy and William Walker will take a deep dive into topics covering wellness and prevention, performance, recovery, and injury management. Our mission is to provide the latest science-based information to help you get the most out of your grappling journey, both on and off the mats, and help you overcome any challenges you may be grappling with. Dr. Hardy is a licensed physician and BJJ practitioner, but the contents of the podcast are meant for educational purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice. Please seek out personalized care from your own medical provider prior to implementing any medical treatment or intervention.
What up, man?
Hi.
What's going on?
Well, as you can tell from my shirt, I woke up from a nap recently.
That is super wrinkled.
It is a little bit.
Wow. It's like your one big wrinkle.
Yeah. It also is a little stretched out, so it looks like my dad just threw me across the room. But
grabbed you by the scruff.
Yeah. Said, go clean my room.
Yeah. All right.
My dad is a 135-pound female.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Oh. Uh-oh. You're in trouble already.
Yeah.
We just got off to a good start here.
Yeah, we did.
So let's see. We had a competition this weekend down Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good one. Great venue down there. Really well run. Andrew's down there coaching the kids today.
Yeah, he was eating scones.
Dude, those were legit. Let me tell you. And they're right. It's entrapment because it's right there inside.
Right.
And they're fresh made and they're warm. And with the
was that burger place open too?
Well, yeah, because we took a picture next to it because it's called Cascade Burger.
I saw that.
And the mascot looks suspiciously like Andrew.
It does. It's like almost like the Mad TV.
It does.
Caricatures.
He had to even admit it yesterday,
Yeah.
and I thought that we could do like a superimpose with your Photoshop skills and maybe do a little something.
Was that you or Nikita that messaged me the photo?
It was Nikita.
So Nikita messaged me. I'm putting him on blast.
Uh-huh.
Sorry, dude. And he said you should Photoshop Chris's or Andrew's face.
That was my idea.
He stole it.
He stole my idea. Number one. Stupid
Didn't bring
blue belt.
you up.
No.
Not even once. He just said, I think you should Photoshop Andrew's face on it. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he sent me the photo.
And you're like, yes.
And I was analyzing the photo and I said, I don't know if I can do better than what it already looks like.
It looks like him with blonde hair, maybe.
A little bit. I don't know.
We should talk about when we went there and the people were confused when we asked for just a burger patty.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, when we went to the last tournament there,
Yeah.
we go up. It's at the Puyallup Fairgrounds.
Yeah, it's nice.
So
Yeah.
typically, not stereotyping, but typically, I think if you're going to go to the fair, you're an American, you're probably obese. Now, just saying.
Statistically, you're correct.
Yeah, and if you're going to get
2/3 of the United States. So, I mean, it's
call
true.
me a liar.
True.
And then you're going to go and get a burger from a fairgrounds. Not many people ask for just patties.
Only people that ride Peloton.
Right. How dare you? Brittany's going to beat your ass. And then, so we go up and we're trying to, make some smart moves.
Mm-hmm.
So we said, hey, can we just get like 4 or 6 patties with cheese?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
We're not Nazis.
Yeah.
And they looked at us like we were
Like,
we
what
were
do
the
you
devil.
mean, just the patty?
Yeah. Wait, I don't understand.
Yeah. So the bun, take it off.
So just don't take the bun out of the bag. Cook the patties. Put them in a box. Throw a piece of cheese on it. Bob's your uncle.
Yeah.
Confusion. They didn't know how to charge us. We said, just charge us
The full.
amount. We're good with it.
Yeah. Now you have extra buns to use, so it saves you guys too, right?
We're small business owners that are trying to help small business owners is what it is.
That's funny though.
And they were confused. Yeah. They called us a couple names.
Well, with you in particular, I can't blame them. But my thing is typically, unless I'm doing that regularly, if I'm going to do the hamburger, I'm going to go full gangster anyway. Yeah. But I get it. Yeah.
I did that yesterday. I went to DQ and I got the triple.
Nice.
Got the triple cheeseburger.
Full on.
Yep. Felt like garbage right after. I also had a blizzard.
With your lactose intolerance.
Yes.
Yeah, amazing.
So I don't know if it was the burger or the blizzard.
Oh,
or,
and you had some cheese curds, deep
or the
fried.
deep fried cheese curds.
That's amazing.
Those cheese curds are good, though.
They are good.
So when you do a cheat day, you're not even playing around.
Yeah, I try to stay away from that kind of vernacular.
Yeah, exactly.
First of all.
Right. That's a good point.
Second, yeah, I destroy my body.
The fact that you use the word vernacular, I'm super proud too, by the way. I like that.
Carrie's rubbing off on me.
So,
What are we talking about today?
well, I had some people ask, let's talk about CBD and
Look at that shirt.
you like
I
that?
didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
Where's that from?
BJJ box hashtag.
Oh, we canceled our subscription.
Yeah. Oh no, I didn't. They should sponsor us.
Weekends are for open mat.
Yeah.
Does it kind of look like an
Aurelius?
all of knowledge? Yeah. Sure. I thought it was initially.
Respect.
Yeah.
Okay. It says weekends are for open mat, and I appreciate it because I just did an open mat this morning.
Yeah.
Unlike you. Did you?
No.
So you're not even living up to the
Because I'm a
stuff that you put?
no, because I was down there helping Andrew coach while you were doing your open mat
Yeah.
on Saturday.
So
yeah.
Well, I've trained twice this weekend. How many times have you trained?
Trained twice this week.
Oh,
Oh, you didn't hear what Carrie said? Yeah. All right, we'll keep that one. I'm glad you didn't have a mic on that one. So, yes, I've trained.
okay.
Actually, I just finished mobility strength training for this too. So, sucker.
Okay. So CBD.
Yeah, wow, you derailed me big time on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, if you look, it's all over, advertisements. You look at any, Flow Grappling, all the tournaments, they have some kind of CBD manufacturer. And, they're historically, there is a kind of a cannabis culture in large part of some of the jiu-jitsu folks too. And, it'd be good to talk about this stuff, especially I'm going to take it from a physician's point of view. So,
And I've had some people actually ask me, for whatever reason, about CBD stuff that are not in the jiu-jitsu community.
oh, for sure. Yeah, a lot of people do. And it's an interesting history behind it. First of all, I think it'd be a good idea to talk about what it is anyway. Cannabidiol is what CBD is. And it from the cannabis plant, whether it's cannabis sativa or indica, there's about 144 cannabinoids. CBD is just one of them. So it's kind of this big untapped resource. They're all distinctly different chemicals in the same kind of family, and they're named cannabinoids. They bind, the human body has these cannabinoid receptors that have various functions throughout the body. So it's really interesting how they work. Most people are familiar with the main cannabinoid in marijuana, THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, actually delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol. And CBD is very different physiologically because unlike THC, you don't have the kind of psychoactive effects from it. So it's pretty interesting. The thing is, when people ask me about it, it's somewhat frustrating for me, both from my biochemistry background and especially as a physician, because there's not a whole lot of research on it. And there's a reason why. Kind of backtracking a little bit, the 1970, the Nixon administration came out with the Drug Act and established the DEA and the schedule system. Are you guys familiar with how you schedule controlled substances? Schedule 1, Schedule 2. You've heard of that?
I've heard that term, but
Yeah. So Schedule 1 is the most restrictive, meaning, and the definition says there's high abuse potential and there's no recognized medical use. Okay.
Isn't that what testosterone is considered?
No, testosterone is way down. Carrie could probably tell you. Is that a 4 or a 5, Carrie?
It's a 4.
A 4. So it's a Schedule 4.
Okay, but it's still a controlled.
It's still a controlled substance. Okay. So you have to, Carrie, when she prescribes it to people, she has to have her DEA number.
And it always has to be signed for.
It sure does because of that. But there's a bunch of nonsense politically that came into it because they put marijuana as a Schedule 1, which means, under definition, there's no recognized medical use. And because if you schedule something as Schedule 1, it's very hard to do research on it. You have to have special permits to even get it in a research lab or study. All kinds of barriers. I think
What are
there's
some other things that are Schedule 1?
there's heroin, things like LSD. What's interesting though is Schedule 2, which is less restrictive. Cocaine, methamphetamine are both Schedule 2 because they have quote unquote medical uses. Okay. And to say that marijuana has no known medical uses is preposterous, right? So
it's a cocaine medical use.
yeah, so cocaine was used as an anesthetic long ago too, right? And I haven't seen applications for methamphetamine. Well, actually, yeah, I do, because if you look at what Ritalin and Adderall are, they're derivatives of methamphetamine, right? Yeah, for ADHD. So, what's that?
Weight loss, phentermine.
Yeah, phentermine. Oh, yeah. Phentermine, some of the weight loss drugs too are in that classification.
Of methamphetamine.
Yeah. So, let's just be honest in what we're
Wait, there's still weight loss drugs that have like drugs like that in it?
Oh, yeah.
That are
Yeah.
prescribed?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, because, if you think about how many people are on Adderall,
A lot.
that is, go look at the drug name, the generic drug name for Adderall. It's a methamphetamine derivative.
What's the thing that writers take?
Yeah,
I know
Adderall.
they take Adderall, but I think they take another thing.
Provigil.
Maybe.
They're similar. Yeah. But anyway, the scheduling systems, because in Schedule 2 drugs, it's much easier to do research on. So a lot of the problems when people ask about, CBD or any of the cannabis-derived products is up until very recently, you couldn't even do research on them. And as we know, our state has recreational marijuana as legal, but federally it's not. And so when you try to get funding for the research, like at NIH or National Science Foundation or any of these funding agencies, it's very, very difficult. It's slowly changing, but until it becomes federally legal, or at least removed from Schedule 1.
And it was put as Schedule 1 right from the beginning when Nixon
Yep.
was-
Yeah, and there's a lot of thought that was his way to get control of the quote unquote hippie movement, right? To be able to then have the weight of the law against them when they're, the kind of counterculture type protesters, and like, well, you guys are using something that's now illegal, so now we're going to arrest you, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so it's that kind of thing when there's no real basis to have that as a Schedule 1, in my opinion, anyway. So it's really because there are medicinal uses for not just THC, but the other cannabinoids that we're finally looking at. To date, 144 we've identified.
Is there is it cannabinoids as a whole are Schedule 1, or is THC CBD's not?
No, marijuana. So you're asking a question, a very good one, and it's confusing because marijuana, in general, that's just the name. Marijuana is Schedule 1. Anything derived from that plant is Schedule 1. Okay. So then you can then how is CBD legal? It's because of the whole hemp versus, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. So hemp and marijuana are the same plant. Okay, there's misconceptions that are different. It's either cannabis sativa or cannabis indica as far as what we call taxonomy, how we name families and species, right? The difference is you can call something hemp if it has 0.3% or less THC by dry weight. So it is the amount of THC present that determines whether you can classify it as hemp or not. Now, you couldn't even, I believe, let me look at I want to make sure I don't misquote this because the actual day. So December 2015, the FDA eased the regulatory requirements to allow researchers to conduct CBD trials. So that was just 2015. That wasn't that 7 years ago. Right. That wasn't that long ago. It hasn't been in a lot of time to really set up get these funded, all these research studies to actually say all these trials to get some good scientific evidence behind this stuff. There's a lot of biological plausibility and a lot of case studies and anecdotal reports on benefits. And we'll talk about one of the primary medical things that got people's attention. here soon. And then in 2018, there's something called the Farm Bill was passed, which made hemp legal in the United States. Before 2018, you couldn't even grow hemp in the United States.
But to be classified as hemp,
it has to be less than 0.3% THC to be classified as hemp. Okay, and this guy, I have a little reference guide here on hemp, and this guy makes a kind of funny point, saying that the Farm Bill made hemp legal, pretty much made it virtually impossible to keep CBD illegal. And he says it would be like making oranges legal, but keeping orange juice illegal, right? Mm-hmm. So I thought that was a kind of a good point to think about. So now it's only, we've only been able to grow hemp in here since, for 4 years now, right? And you've seen a flood now. You've probably seen recently in the last couple of years, a flood of these CBD products now, all over the place. Well, historically, CBD was actually approved by the FDA for one type of medical condition and certain types of childhood seizures that were resistant to treatment with many other conventional medications. Mm-hmm. It actually helped quite a bit, just CBD preparations. And there was a documentary, I forgot what it's called, before this was all legal, showing these parents basically going on the black market and doing illegal just to buy CBD oil for their kid that was having these intractable seizures, right? Yeah. It was so ridiculous.
I think that was kind of the most, from the outside perspective, that seemed like the biggest, the child seizures thing where they're having just constant seizures throughout the day. And then whether it was, I don't know what the ratio is, CBD, marijuana, I don't know. But something within that plant was helping to literally get rid of
or reduce them significantly to the point where they could have a quasi-normal childhood. And by the way, seizures that often inhibit their development significantly, as you can imagine, right? Mm-hmm. So quality of life issues, just normal development. I mean, it was a game changer for a lot of people.
Right, and it's like life-saving for those kids, at least it sounds like. And that seemed like that was a huge example, especially because social media had been more popular, so then more people were able to see those stories.
That's right.
And then what is it, I don't know if you know, but what is it that CBD or THC, whatever, the marijuana plant is doing for those kids?
So that is the $1 million question, right? And there's some speculation on what exactly is the mechanism.
Because the research thing is still...
That's right. And so some of the so CBD has a lot of different properties. It binds to, and this is, we're just talking about just CBD, not CBG or CBN or some of the other cannabinoids. They bind to various receptors in the brain. They have anti-inflammatory properties. They reduce what's called oxidative stress. You probably remember us talking about that, free radical formation. Mm-hmm. They seem to be neuroprotective as far as preventing axon degeneration, which are the communication ports of the neurons. But, we're not really sure the exact mechanism. There's a lot of proposed mechanisms. All they know is that the CBD in particular, not necessarily THC, but CBD in particular was very, very beneficial for reducing these things. And we'll probably end up figuring out the mechanisms.
Right.
And I'm not, I don't stay way up on that. I'm not a pediatric neurologist that maybe stays up to date. Carrie, do you know if they've proposed any new mechanisms for that at all?
Not that I'm aware of yet.
Yeah.
And a lot of the conventional neurologists still aren't even recommending.
Exactly. And Carrie's point was that she says no, but even some of the conventional neurologists currently aren't even using that as part of their arsenal. And not only is it, and it's a couple types of seizures. It's not just seizures in general for kids. There's a couple types of them that weren't working. But what they found is that even some of the other types, the CBD seemed to be helping the traditional seizure medications work better. So it was kind of an additive effect too. So that, like you said, that got a lot of people's attention. Like, hey, okay, so first of all, that right there, and I believe that was back in 2007 or something like that when the FDA allowed it. And they still had that stupid thing on a Schedule 1. even though it clearly had some kind of medical application, right? So, that's the kind of thing that drives me crazy as a physician when I see, some obvious, whether it's political or ideological reasons getting in the way of medical progress. Anyway.
Is it still Schedule 1?
What's that? Marijuana?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, marijuana is federally Schedule 1. So. That's why if you went to a pot shop here in Washington State where it's recreationally legal, you can't pay with a credit card or a bank card.
I see.
Yeah, you have to pay with cash still, which is a whole nother problem, right? Because then you have these places with huge amount of cash on them as a security. Yeah. So it's a mess.
Right.
So now the other side of that is, especially when we're talking about THC, I mean, that's not a benign chemical, okay? There are definite reports out there, especially with people predisposed to, that have like family history of bipolar or schizophrenia, where THC can be really bad for a certain group of people. So you just can't make blanket recommendations just because some people are like, oh, I really like it. It works well for me, And there definitely is some research behind THC and or CBD together for like chronic pain, things like that, anxiety, right?
I think that was the other thing when I had started hearing about this plant marijuana being beneficial was for like pain relief for cancer people.
Yeah, in nausea.
Yeah,
for sure. Pretty well established for that it is. That's why it's one of the primary reasons people were getting legit medical marijuana cards.
Yeah, so that's why it was like the weird thing was it was old people and really young people that were getting the most benefit, and then we were kind of like, well, why don't we use it for more than that?
Right.
So it was like, yeah.
What I think, and another thing before we get into this any deeper, so you have a plant, and when I did my integrative medicine fellowship with Andrew Weil, he was originally trained as a botanist before he was a physician. And his point was, and I think Carrie complete, this is the way she was trained too, is that when you take these plant compounds and remove one single compound from them and then, give that as a medication, there are so many plants where these herbal type extracts, which this would be one, a marijuana tincture, has all these cannabinoids working together. You have, one of them might be moderating the other effect. It might be, balancing it out pretty much. And when you take a reductionist approach and you take out pieces of these, just like we're going to take this piece of it and we're going to take this piece, usually you get more side effects, okay? Because that's not how it came in nature, right? Where you get the full spectrum of the cannabinoids and they kind of all work in synergy together. So that applies to any kind of more of an herbal preparation. Most of our pharmaceuticals originated as some type of herbal chemical, right? And then they've modified it and patented it and all that, but they've taken a piece of it out. And then, without those other things that it kind of came with. Does that make sense? And so then, you tend to see more side effects to that. You kind of agree with that, Carrie? Yeah, Carrie is like, shaking her head 100%. So anyway, that's a little background. So, when we talk about this stuff and, a lot uses of CBD and or THC, I can't give a recommendation or dosage or anything like that because I can't in good conscience as a physician, regardless of what my own personal experiences are, some family or friends and family members that have gotten like, hey, I'm taking this and I get really good benefit from it. When you make a recommendation as a physician, more especially for public health type of issues, you really have to individualize everything. Like we've talked about previously, when you give blanket recommendations, there's probably a group of people out there that is not only is it not beneficial for, probably a lot of adverse effects. Like we talked about the mental health issues too. And because of the stuff hasn't been studied in groups of people of different age groups, any psychoactive substance, whether it's THC, MDMA, LSD, psilocybin, any of these things that could potentially have medical application, especially in a developing brain, like teenagers, who a lot of them, that's kind of the age where they start experimenting with the kind of stuff. You know, the brain isn't finished developing yet. And just as a precautionary principle, I really, you know, as a physician, I wouldn't recommend that. You know, if your brain's done developing, you know, you're an adult, do what you're going to do, right? I'm not your parent. But there should be a lot more caution in these things being used routinely in people with developing brains. And that goes with, you know, even SSRIs, like the antidepressant medications. You look at who has the most side effects from that, and it's usually the teenagers, young adults, right? And I would speculate it's probably for the same reasons, because their prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed. A lot of these things, really, they've estimated up until age 25, at least in males. It's probably not done developing yet, which would explain a lot about young males anyway.
Right.
So, yeah, I could speak from personal experience. So, go ahead. Were you going to say something, Olivia?
Yeah, I was just curious. So, because you were talking about like the cancer side of things and some of that usage.
Yep.
Do you know anything about RSO, Rick Simpson oil? I've heard that term before used for people who use it for cancer.
I would have to see what are the constituents of that. Okay. I'm not from, you know, it's probably someone that's put their name on it. That's some concoction, if I had to guess.
Yeah, it is definitely named after somebody.
Yeah, so I would have to see to tell you even give you any kind of intelligent answer. I haven't looked at that to know what it's derived from, what the makeup of that oil is. But yeah, if you look that up, I'll be able to give you a better answer. Okay. So there is some evidence for, you know, in the short amount of time that we've had to work with this stuff, there is some early evidence. Most of it comes from animal studies. Okay, there are some studies in humans as well too. But the biggest thing is anxiety. There seems to be some evidence that is definitely helpful. We're talking about CBD specifically right now. Insomnia, another one. Chronic pain and addiction, especially lowering cravings from tobacco or someone's trying to quit opioids. There is some evidence that it could be beneficial for that. Again, there's not any long-term studies right now. But if you look at the first two, the anxiety and insomnia, that kind of goes with that. Both of those are associated typically with an increased sympathetic nervous system state of the brain, like an increased flight or fight response, right? And so that flight or fight response in general is inflammatory in nature. And so if you have something that modulates and reduces inflammation in the brain, perhaps, then it would make sense from what we know about that compound why it would be effective against anxiety and insomnia, because both of those kind of share, in a lot of cases, the same kind of underlying problem. If you look at it from like a stress cut point of view, like the allostatic load, yeah. So, and, you know, you could say that those two in particular, if you look at, you know, because this is a grappling podcast. So, you know, where could this be beneficial? And again, we don't know what dose to use. We don't know how to optimize any of these things. But, you know, people that are experimenting with CBD, you know, especially for anxiety, you could think of like pre-competition nerves, right? That if it has that anxiety reducing effect, you know, that could be, I'm not saying it is, but it certainly could be. You could say that could be an application. You could use it for the grappling community.
Can you, so when I've gone shopping for this stuff,
yeah,
I've noticed there's CBD with THC. Like it seems like almost everything has some sort of THC in it. But then I've had it where it's 1-to-1, it's 5-to-1, it's 20-to-1.
Yep. And again, so some of the early pharmacokinetics, which means just how drugs work in the body and pharmacodynamics, so the studies have seemed to show that THC actually helps potentiate the effects of CBD. they work both on the cannabinoid receptors, but there's more than one kind of cannabinoid receptor, and they can have like kind of opposing actions. And so sometimes, someone could have a bad experience and can't really take THC by themselves, but they add CBD to it and it kind of smooths out that effect. And it probably makes the CBD work better for what it does, but we can't say anything definitive on that. So you'll see all these things and people are basically just trying stuff out. Right. Okay. And again, without the long-term studies, I would just caution people, especially if you have a pretty strong mental health history, especially like bipolar, schizophrenia, or any of those type of things. I'd be very careful with THC specifically. But the hemp products, though, you can buy, and they'll tell you that, they've done all the HPLC and mass spectrometry and all these kind of the way we analyze what's in something to make sure that it has like almost no THC in it. Okay. And that's important because let's say that you want to try CBD, but you are in a job that you get your analysis done. And if you pop positive for THC, you can lose your job, or if you're a CDL driver, you could lose your license. So, don't take any of that stuff lightly. And we're going to talk about quality control in these over-the-counter CBD products here too. That's something we're going to end on, just to say if you're going to do this stuff, how to look for a good product, right?
Yeah, from my experience, when I started taking some, that's like when I first tried some of the, like especially the edible stuff, it's like 10-1 or something, like 10. Yep. 10 is it? What's the measurement that they're using when they do that 10-1? Like 10
milligrams typically.
10 milligrams.
Yep, typically
THC to 1 CBD.
It's usually the opposite.
Okay, and like when they're like large like that, I get in my own head. I start like, ooh.
Oh, then you may very well have the
opposite.
Yeah,
I think it was.
Because, people see most of the, anecdotally people, especially edibles. So again, this is important too. Edibles are a different compound. They may start out the same, but when the liver processes them, it metabolizes that, and that THC is actually metabolized to something that is actually more potent than delta 9 THC. So and it becomes very almost hallucinogenic. Right. Okay, so it's a different compound. So don't think you're getting the same thing.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I would like go. Is my mind would kind of be like a little squirrel.
Right.
It was different. Then I found the 1-to-1s through recommendations, and I don't have that like really at all.
Most people, no, but most people will say that, and that kind of, again, without the studies being done, just the anecdotal reports and just hearing a lot of people's, how it affects them. A general consensus is when you do get like a 1-to-1, you have less of that kind of those weird hallucination, auditory, visual, and paranoia when you add the CBD. Just kind of, I think it counteracts a lot of that stuff.
Well, what about CBN? I've heard you say this. I've heard it talked about.
Again, CBN, CBG, they're all different cannabinoids, right? And there's 144 of them, at least to date. There'll probably be more as we find out. There's very little. Carrie, I think you talked about what, CBN or CBG? CBG. What did you find about CBG? Because she stays up with this.
From New York. CBGBs.
They don't know a lot.
Yeah.
Because that research hasn't been done yet.
Right.
So they couldn't make any decisions on its efficacy.
Yeah. So what Carrie's saying off mic is the same thing I was saying, that they just don't know right now. We don't have the studies, and the more this gets funded, especially if marijuana. So THC, the whole marijuana plant is on Schedule 1, right? Not just THC. So until we get all these the research done, it's very frustrating because there's probably a lot of benefit in some of these things. We just don't know.
Yeah, and if someone maybe got a recommendation from a friend, or you listen to this podcast, you hear me talk about saying like I take the 1-to-1 CBD edible.
Yeah.
I just do a 10 milligram at night.
Mm-hmm.
I've had to find a certain brand.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's a couple brands that sit well with me and stuff like that. And there's some that at 10 milligrams, even 1-to-1,
Yep.
will still kind of get me actually the sensory stuff that I'm not really into. So just be wary of that, especially because most of the shops will carry 10-to-1, 10 THC to 1, and they'll recommend the person behind the counter. Maybe they're nice, it's fine. But they'll say, hey, this helps me sleep. But that's like an experienced person that probably is looking for a different experience than maybe what you're looking for.
And maybe there's biochemical individuality, right?
Which Olivia and I have like completely separate and different experiences when we were testing some of these things.
Yeah.
It was certain brands I prefer that are different than her, actually.
And it has to do with also what is the quality control on these things. You know, if you were, you know, that's why you see why as a physician I can't give a recommendation for this. Right. You know, it's not ethical. But just from a biochemical point of view, if you are doing this, a reputable manufacturer should have the kind of analytical chemistry stuff on the package. Mm-hmm. Like this has been tested by high performance liquid chromatography or GC, you know, whatever they're doing to standardize this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. It's not like you go into a drugstore and you buy acetaminophen, you know, or Tylenol, where you know that stuff is super standardized. You kind of know to, you know, a couple percentage points what you're getting. To your point, you could have some person now who knows who's making this stuff.
Well, that was actually the leading reason we pulled away from the CBD vape pen stuff.
Yeah,
because it was like, who knows where these oils are made and what's in them, and
it's not just the CBD. Then it's those carrier oils. You have no idea what those are doing long term for your lungs, and man, it's
like what's actually in those.
Yeah. So that stuff is it's the Wild West still a little bit.
Yeah. So we moved away from those because we figured that this is kind of the quote unquote safest, I guess.
Yeah, and
trying to find good brands.
Well, exactly, and you know that whole liver thing and that metabolizes THC specifically, and also metabolizes CBD. By the way, all this stuff goes through. It's called the first pass effect. When you take something orally, it gets absorbed by the intestines and then goes through the portal system to the liver, where it's actually like, hey, what the heck is this? We got, you know, and it does stuff to it to get it out of the system. And sometimes that's metabolized as something that can be less potent or sometimes more potent depending on what the molecule is.
Yeah.
So many variables here with that. Now, speaking of which, so the people that also are taking that say, you know, they're comfortable taking CBD from hemp, which is legal, as long as you get you kind of know how much you're taking, and it's a brand. We're going to talk more about that at the end, but bioavailability is very important on this too, because CBD is not very well absorbed from the gastrointestinal tract. So it's absorbed. It's actually absorbed better dermally through the skin. So those CBD products, where the topical ones, depending on how much CBD is even in there, and there are receptors in the dermis too for the cannabinoids. So for like, you know, sore muscles and stuff like that, which seems to be the biggest market for us in the grapplers, right?
Yeah, we've tried a lot of different ones. There is one that seems to be pretty good that has it gives it, I think it has what menthol in it.
See, that's the thing, man.
It makes you feel like it's really working.
Yeah, the problem is menthol has its own analgesic properties. So in other words, pain relieving properties. So those type of things they could say it's CBD, and they may have not anything that is even pharmacologically beneficial.
Is there a number that we...
Again, here we are. We don't have a dose, right? The research, though, especially so let me backtrack a little bit. The other way to get it into your body well is sublingual. Just put it under your tongue. It passes into the bloodstream directly.
Tincture.
Yep, tincture, exactly. But the doses they've used for CBD, the oral, and when I say oral, I mean like the sublingual, is usually around 300 milligrams. So they're pretty hefty doses.
When we were taking that, I think it was the RSO that she was talking about. It tasted like burnt trees.
Tar.
That's right. And that means
brutal.
that it's probably potent because those cannabinoids, especially CBD, has that very kind of
I couldn't do it.
It almost burns the back of your throat when you get a little bit back there.
It's just icky.
Yep. Well, that's probably actually legit. Probably has what it says in there. Yeah. But yeah, as far as a lot of these over-the-counter products don't even have enough CBD in there. A lot of these roll-ons, you'll see a ton of them marketed, and they can say CBD because maybe they put a little in there, but it's mainly a menthol-based thing, right? Oh, it seems to work. Well, yeah, So it's hard to say what you're getting. Unless you have some of the, especially some of the creams and stuff that have more of the just actual CBD with a good carrier like coconut oil or something like that.
There's one that we found that I've been promoting it.
You like
to people that we really like it. It's I think called Restore or something. We get it from the place in Lake Stevens there. But
again, you're buying it from a cannabis shop, right? Which is probably from cannabis as far as the.
Yeah, I think it has THC and
exactly. You can't buy that stuff outside of the states that it's not legal. Gotcha. So you can only buy those hemp derived products. And again, if you have to be drug tested,
so you can have traceable amounts through skin.
Oh, for sure. You absolutely can. It can come up. It's absorbed.
I feel like I have told your brother the opposite.
Have you?
Because he works for the government. Well, and I was like, dude, it's all good.
If you think about it, right? Hormones come as a cream.
Yeah.
Right?
Carrie's point was that, testosterone and estrogen comes as a topical cream too, right? So
super bro science. Try getting them fired.
Can can CBD, if you were drug tested, show up?
If you test for it.
But would it show up under marijuana?
No. So, but the problem is that many of these CBD products, unless they're very careful, still will have trace them. Because remember, you can call something hemp if it's 0.3% THC or less. Yeah. So some of these actually still have some THC in there, and depending on the sensitivity of the drug test, even though it's not pharmacologically active, in other words, it wouldn't produce any kind of psychoactive effects, it could still pop positive on a test. So I'd be very cautious with CBD products if you are drug tested.
You ever watch that TV show Moonshiners?
No.
It's on like Discovery or something like that. But it's following guys in like Louisiana that are literally still doing moonshine.
I lived in West Virginia for a while. Yeah, there's definitely some moonshining going on.
And they were following these guys, and then one guy they were following is trying to make it legit. Like he's trying to like get the permits and make his distillery and all that. And the amount of pain in the ass that is, I have to imagine it's a similar process. And he's also trying to like do it above board, so actually have like clean vats and
that's right,
all that kind of crap.
The regulatory piece,
but a lot. I mean, it just is what it is. Really, almost any supplement company, from what we know now, is they'll just use the cheapest manufacturer that manufactures this.
Yep,
just a different label.
That's it. Slap a label on it and call it Chris and Bill's super formula,
but
or whatever.
It also makes this other stuff.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a point I want to talk about if people that buy these hemp-based CBD products. But let me make sure. I had a couple of other notes here. I want to make sure because I did an exhaustive literature search, believe it or not, for sports performance in cannabidiol. There are 2 articles. There's only been like 2 studies done, interventional studies on there. One was done to look at muscle soreness that seemed to have no effect in that study. And the second one, they tested endurance, and these are both like crazy small sample sizes. I think this study involved 9 males. There's not enough power in that study to say anything useful anyway. But even in this small study that says it appeared to alter something like VO2 max a little bit, and these are endurance things. So, and again, these are very small studies. There's almost no research done on this stuff because of the regulatory environment. But anyway, that's why I thought that, when we were going to talk about, and this paper actually mentions the sports performance anxiety.
Is this the soreness one?
No, this is another study. They looked at some of the proposed mechanisms in sport and how it could theoretically be useful. And they mentioned sports performance anxiety. And they're just, like I talked about earlier, they're just speculating that, there is some evidence that for the general population that it does help with anxiety, that it may help with this type of anxiety too.
I mean, that's what I hear. That's probably the most, I won't say generic in like a negative way, but generic response I hear from people that like have a pen and they hit that thing throughout the day is like if they just feel like it's more of an anxiety thing that they're doing than what they're using it for. But at the same time, I doubt that they're hitting like a CBD pen.
Well, right. I've seen just in my clinical practice that people just using THC a lot actually can make it worse in some cases with some people. Right. So again, and again, that study that looked at the anxiety, they're using at least 300 milligrams, right? And up to 600 milligrams of CBD. So we're talking about higher doses than a lot of people are getting from these over-the-counter.
Can you overdose on CBD?
Yeah, you can overdose on anything, right? But it's harder. So the biggest thing with CBD you got to realize is these things are metabolized by the liver. And there's a system of enzymes called the cytochrome P450 system, which is basically that whole system's job is to detoxify stuff. And there are different what we call isoforms. That means there are different of these enzymes they bind to different types of substances. So most drugs are metabolized through this system. And so if you're taking CBD and you're also taking some other medication, the same system that could be metabolizing CBD at the same time could also be trying to metabolize the drug you're taking, the pharmaceutical, which could then either inhibit it in the enzyme and make your dose of your regular medicine way too high, or it can upregulate the detoxifying thing and basically make your dose of medication disappear from the body and not even work well. So there's interactions with that detox mechanism, right? So, the classic is alcohol, ethanol, and Tylenol. That's a potent thing for liver failure. The metabolite of Tylenol goes through the same system that ethanol or alcohol is metabolized by, and it can really make this metabolite of Tylenol that is super toxic to the liver can actually accentuate it. So you just got to be careful with any of these things. They're not benign just because they're natural, right? They're still, Carrie always makes the point, they're still chemicals, right?
That's the big sell for the potheads out there. No disrespect.
Look, man,
is that you can't overdose.
It's from nature.
Yeah, and I will tell you this. I mean, if I had to, if you put a gun to my head and said, if someone was going to try to treat their chronic pain, as long as they didn't have psychiatric disorders, from either, from a risk-benefit ratio of opioids, versus someone like, hey, I'm not using those, I'm kind of self-medicating with THC, and they seem to be doing, in my clinical experience, just anecdotally, talking to some of my patients, they do a lot better and a lot more functional than, as opposed to being on opioid medications. So
I think there's actually, you kind of referenced this a little bit, but I think there's a couple like outpatients that for people that are on like hard stuff, black tar heroin,
right?
That to get off, it's almost like they're not trying to get them just where they're dead set sober, but they're getting them to at least to just off of those hard drugs,
right,
onto marijuana. And it's almost like they're getting their life back in like baby steps almost.
Yeah. And that was this guy's point. This guy from the Harvard medical letter, this guy who's one of Harvard's cannabis experts, medical marijuana experts, he was bringing up the point that for addiction, they are using CBD specifically to help people reduce their cravings for, heroin and things like that, right? So, it seems early evidence shows that it could certainly be beneficial for that. Again, the challenge is to parse out what groups do we think this is going to benefit? What people do we really need to watch out for, as far as that goes? And we don't have enough data to say that yet. So that's why, it's like, I can have whatever personal experiences I have or my friends have or whatever and hear it, hundreds of times. But on a population level, it still doesn't I still can't say yes, and you should do this, right? And I just want to reiterate again, especially in the developing brains, late teens, early 20s, man, you guys just got to be careful with this stuff, man. It's not benign. It can have bad consequences.
Yeah.
Like long term?
Yeah. People have had a schizophrenic break on THC that hadn't had schizophrenia before. There's a predisposition, but that's what put them over, right? And they weren't the same again. And, then they're, have battling a schizophrenia in some, way or form the rest of their life. And, that's tragic. So we just need to know more about that. Carrie can tell you, even with SSRIs, which are the antidepressants, we've gotten more sophisticated than that. She does genetic testing, on her patients because there is some correlation now with genetics, like, hey, this group of people will do better with this specific one, and this group of people will be, so we're able to even parse that out better now because we've studied those for a while.
Right.
And I think we're going to get more and more clarity on this, on the cannabis type products as we go up. Because, my point on this is having them as Schedule 1 is absurd. Okay. At least bring it down to schedule, if you're going to schedule it, bring it down, so we can at least do the research better without all these regulatory roadblocks. And that way we can know more and what's good and what isn't, and what we thought was good, maybe not be. And, that's how science works. Right. And they're not letting us do it efficiently.
Yeah.
So, what I wanted to, I know I'm rambling here, but I wanted to get to the point. So this is actually from a research study.
The way you wear those glasses on the end of your nose.
I have to, dude. I can't stick them back into because of my thing here.
I
know.
I'm just saying. It's
pretty
hot.
Just an aside, we were at the, as you know, you got Marco Polo'd by Andrew, and we were outside the competition taking a break, eating a scone with jam. And he made the statement that I was out there feeding ducks bread, like an old joke. So I thought I'd just live up to the part. I just walk around. I was thinking about getting like a monocle, maybe. What do you think about that?
I'm not going to be mad at it, especially if you let those eyebrows go.
Maybe get a top hat, especially when I go bald. That'd be a legit. What do you think, Carrie?
Win?
He still has more hair than you.
Hey, we're setting the bar pretty low, huh?
So Carrie said that basically I still have more hair than Bill, and
on your ass, maybe.
Nice.
Perhaps.
I got a baby butt. It's all good.
We also talked about your obsession with spats yesterday.
Oh, really?
Yes, with Brian.
Is he a spats only guy?
No, he does not like spats, but he thought it was very interesting how much you really paid attention to them.
Well, when some dude's freaking...
I know. I got it. I feel the same way, but...
in my face.
He basically said he wouldn't, even with or without shorts, he wouldn't be caught dead in them.
Oh, like he's like not about spats
at all.
Okay.
And we brought it up because Jeff, the organizer of Revolution, back years ago, he made a public service announcement at the tournament, like, you cannot wear spats. They're not spats. They're yoga pants.
Respect it.
Right.
I have a couple pair myself, but it's one of those things where, dude, it's just like even at regular gyms, dudes that will just wear, yoga pants.
What I told him he should do is get a pair of spats, no shorts, get a tank top rash guard, and tuck it in. What do you think?
I mean,
He said he was going to do it for you.
I'll know more about him than Andrea.
Yikes. So anyway, that's a little diversion there. That's hilarious.
How you doing?
Yeah. So we'll do a grappling with podcast rash guard. I thought we should do a set of spats too.
Do we have to have a camera down there?
We could put a target like right in the front, like a little bullseye target.
I don't want to embarrass you though. I got good legs and yours are.
Dude, I have shorts on right now, punk. Mine are pretty good.
You want to put them on the table?
You want to tell him what Eli said?
Oh. I know what Eli said because Andrew told me what Eli said.
We'll bring that up at the end.
We'll bring that up at the end. Hold that one because that was great. Anyway, back to this study that looked at CBD products, over-the-counter CBD products. Only 31% of them sold online were labeled accurately. And that means that the measured CBD content was within 10% of the label. Okay, that's what they thought was accurate, within 10%. Only less than a third of them.
Is this kind of testing normal for supplements and stuff?
Yeah, they do that stuff, yeah. It's really important. And they say that nearly half underestimated the amount and a quarter overestimated the CBD content. And a fifth of the samples contained detectable levels of THC.
Oh.
Okay, so this is my point. And so when you look at these things, I mean, Carrie, I think you guys have a CBD, is it Procana is the one you use? And she uses that because, she is a biochemist before, and she's very much on that analytical chemistry piece. We want to see, okay, what is your quality assurance product? Are you third party tested? What does that data look like coming out of that manufacturing process, right? And it's really, really important.
So you could, if you had one of these and you got tested at work.
Yeah, and you're like, hey, I was taking a hemp CBD thing.
I was at Alicia Keys concert. There was just some stuff getting passed around.
Right. But even if you think you're doing something responsibly, is my point.
Right. And you get caught with your pants down.
Yes, figuratively and literally.
Suck.
Yes, it would. It wouldn't be good.
Interesting. Okay.
So, that's the kind of thing, the take-home thing on this. Oh, and there's another point I wanted to make. A lot of people want to use CBD for muscle soreness. Mm-hmm. Or, so do you remember when
I use it for joints?
Yeah.
Like my fingers.
For sure. And I think that would be a good idea. But people using them for like, I just have a hard workout. Right after my workout, I'm going to slather CBD on.
Sure.
You remember we talked about non-steroidal anti-inflammatories and taking those, and it may be inhibiting the gains you're going to get because we need some amount of inflammation after that input of exercise. So,
you could be doing the same thing with this.
You could be doing the same thing with CBD if you're using it for that purpose. What I would say is probably wait for at least a day till have the adaptive process start, and then you could kind of use a little bit of that. But if you wanted to for that reason, but for joints and stuff, I think that's a better use for it. When especially when we have jujitsu hands. Yeah, that'd probably be a really good use for a topical CBD product is for like the joints of the fingers and wrists and elbows and stuff like that. I think it would be a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah, but Olivia, did that kind of cover what? Some of the questions you've gotten or anything that you were wondering about?
I did have one more question for you.
Yeah.
So how you said that the body has cannabinoid receptors?
Yep.
Are they specifically cannabinoid or are they also receptors for other things?
They're specifically cannabinoid, part of the endocannabinoid system. Just very much like the opioid system in the brain.
That's crazy though, right?
Yep.
Like that
I know.
Like our body has
we have these things that bind to them, which shows there is some type of whatever you believe, some type of over time an evolutionary or whatever you want to call it, adaptive thing as we've developed as a species, right?
It doesn't matter if you're like an intelligent design person or if you're an evolutionary or both.
Right.
It's like there's
something. So there's something from you human beings as we were coming up here that in the environment that interacted with that.
That's interesting.
I think it is.
I think it makes sense a little bit, right? Because just even with how humans have lived off the land and whether you want to go into like the mushroom area or plants of other
For sure.
types. Yeah.
And the other side of that coin is like, well, we had this system for other things, which it does work, it has other functions, but oh, by the way, these things bind to those. So I mean, just like the opioid system, our opioid system basically is in place for endorphins, like our natural produced opioids that we produce in response to pain and things like that. But, we do have these, poppy derived compounds that also bind to these receptors is my point.
What do our receptors do besides?
Oh my gosh, dude, that is a whole, and I don't claim to be an expert on the endocannabinoid system, but it is hugely important. Neurotransmission, all kinds of brain. They're on heart, they're in skin, the immune system. They're almost ubiquitous throughout the body. I think people are still piecing together all the functions of it. Yeah, it's really kind of fascinating, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question or two.
Okay.
From a little bit off subject.
Cool.
On CBD. So I'm just going to fire one at you.
Do it.
Have you heard of CLA?
I have.
What is that?
Conjugated linoleic acid.
Okay.
It's a fat.
Okay. So that's not the question.
Okay.
Does it help with fat loss? And is there a supplement that can be taken along with a healthy diet and exercise to help aid with fat loss?
Really good question.
So does it help with fat loss?
So that's kind of a reductionist thing. I haven't looked at the latest literature on, again, remember we were talking about taking one thing out and then trying to make a supplement out of it, taking it out of its general, like a plant. You're taking one compound out of the plant when there's other things in there that work synergistically. This is the same idea. CLA is in high amounts in like pastured animals, grass-fed beef, game, things like that. It is it's a fat that does seem to have some anti-inflammatory effects to it. So it depends on what is causing the gain of fat in the first place. Are you insulin resistant, which means that you're, metabolic syndrome where you're inflammatory in general, where added CLA in your diet could help reduce some of the inflammation because it gets embedded in cell membranes and things like that. Which then in turn could help insulin sensitivity, which then in turn could help you mobilize fat. Okay. So, Carrie, do you know anything else with CLA? Do you use it routinely? I don't, because it's very reductionist. You see people will market things all the time. But what I would recommend is, it's especially prevalent in, good pastured animal products or, like grass-fed beef, things like that. And that's where I would get it because the other stuff in there is all working together.
So
I personally wouldn't supplement it and take the time and money to buy a supplement.
Okay.
Plus, conjugated linoleic acid also is an omega-6 fatty acid, which also is polyunsaturated, which also is prone to oxidation. So if you get a supplement, you take it out of its natural form, it's prone to oxidation on the cell, just like the omega-3 supplements, right? It's the same idea. Then you could be importing oxidative stress and things like that. So I'm not a fan of doing that as a supplement.
Okay. I'll allow it.
Okay.
Are thermogenics, like fat burners, bad for you?
Yes, in my opinion. Thermogenics is a fancy word for stimulants. Okay.
Like cocaine.
Yeah. So, caffeine, the whole fin thing. Remember that? All these things that are, yes, they will help you lose weight, but so will, like you said, so will methamphetamine. And have you seen a fat meth addict typically?
Only one.
But not really, right?
Right.
You look at what methamphetamine and stuff like that does to, you look at, it's an appetite suppressant too. You look at what it does to kids that are on Adderall and stuff like that. They have a hard time gaining weight. They're not meeting their growth milestones sometimes. It's because of
Can it have permanent effects on someone's metabolism?
It's unknown, perhaps, because there's a microbiome effect too. There's so many moving pieces in that. You're basically providing a stimulus to keep your body in a sympathetic flight or fight state. So, it will ramp up, quote unquote, your metabolism, but it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
And that stuff is not good long-term for you. Yeah. Just isn't. But again, people use it because like, well, it works. I'm like, yeah, but it's one of these instant gratification things again, right? So you take it and you lose some weight for 3 months. Then what? You're just going to keep taking it, and then you end up gaining all the weight back and probably more. And, it's just, so no, I don't. If you're using a thermogenic or as a stimulant to enhance athletic performance,
What would something like that?
Caffeine.
Okay.
Yeah. Cocaine.
Pre-workout?
For sure. Yeah. Well, that's when people do it. Yeah. It has a bronchodilation effect, and it mobilizes blood glucose, the whole 9 yards. And, it's basically, getting your adrenergic system, your adrenaline, all that up.
Didn't you tell me once that there was a pre-workout that you were taking that it like dilated your colon?
No.
I swear that was you.
My colon.
Yeah.
How's the colon going to get dilated?
You told me, and I was I said that to you. I said, I don't understand how your colon gets dilated.
We were talking about nitric oxide and bronchodilation and vasodilation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't my colon. I don't know what group you're hanging out with talking about colon dilation.
I really only hang out with you guys.
I don't know about that. Is he on any chat rooms or anything? I don't know. Sound like a Reddit thread or anything? I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe I'm mixing a couple people up.
Probably.
But
no, there's no. The only thing never mind. I'm not even going to go there. That you'd have to mechanically dilate a colon.
Mechanically?
Like poop? Or something.
What'd she say?
I'm not going to repeat what she said. Something.
Foreign object.
Yes.
Member.
Perhaps. Yeah. So typically, and it's not something you want anyway, especially the lower parts of the colon, the rectum. That's how you get diverticulosis. You have a lot of pressure. People that are constipated often will dilate and kind of push out, make little pouches in the colon.
Isn't that the same thing that Brock Lesnar had?
Diverticulosis?
Or he had diverticulitis.
Yeah, but what happens is you have diverticulosis, which creates the pouches, and then those pouches get infected, and that becomes diverticulitis.
Which is like holes in the...
Yeah, so basically if you think about a membrane here, and it's basically like a hemorrhoid of the colon. Okay. Where you got actually where the blood vessels penetrate the colon wall, it creates a weak spot. And pressure will push that out with the blood vessel and create a pouch with the blood vessel in there. That's why oftentimes a diverticulosis, you can get bleeding from it too internally. It's like a hemorrhoid within the colon, basically.
You haven't had to deal with that in a long time.
Me?
Yeah, is what you're saying.
No.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't.
It's turned into a lesson.
Yeah.
Bill on.
Well, I just
Well, just don't dilate your colon, Bill.
I'm just taking your advice.
What's funny is now the next time you ask me something, I'm going to be very, very clear, and I think we're going to have to write some stuff down for you.
Why?
Because then you won't ask me, you won't tell me that I told you that something I was taking dilated my colon.
Fair enough. I'm just trying to get the facts straight,
But I appreciate that.
My mom's going to watch this.
Excellent. She'll be very proud.
She will. I don't have any other questions. Kind of a quick one.
Yeah.
No other questions today?
Some might have come in, but I didn't write them.
Well, all we have left is the comment that, Eli made about people being muscular.
What was his comment?
Well, I thought he told you.
He did, but you'll say it better. I just want to hear you say it.
No, we were talking about people at the gym. He is...
Eli is a young man.
And he's working out. He's doing great right now.
How old is he, 15?
Yeah, I don't want to give his personal information
He's 25, yeah.
But he trains at our gym, and he was just talking about, he had some goals about, he wants to be muscular, and, He's lifting. He's doing a great job right now, really getting in shape, especially considering most of his peers in that age group are just inactive. But anyway, talking about people in the gym that he would like, oh yeah, basically I think he told his dad that, no, you're not really that muscular. I didn't, it's not really something he wanted to aspire to.
Yeah.
And he brought you up as like a good middle ground.
Weird.
That's what I thought too.
What was his words?
I didn't hear it. I'm just getting relayed through his dad.
Okay, let me just bring up the evidence here.
Well, then why did you ask me?
You're
so ridiculous. I'm just giving you hearsay from his dad that told me this.
He wanted you to say it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He wanted you to say that he's muscular.
I wanted to hear your big fat lips talk about me. Let's see.
So you have the quote.
He said, Eli just said I'm small.
This is his dad
messaging
you.
Yes. He wants to be bigger than me. He wants to be bigger than his dad.
Mm-hmm.
He also said that Bill's a good size. All right, that's me.
Yeah.
Not too big, not too small.
You're Goldilocks over
but
here.
really vascular.
Oh, here we go. Because I know how obsessed you were about being vascular, and you asked me a bunch of questions about it.
It's not that I'm obsessed about it.
Yeah, you're only obsessed.
The internet's obsessed about it.
Not your vascularity.
I just happen to be
okay.
The muse for people.
Where's your back and your spats again?
Yeah, you can see some veins through my spats.
Oh God! Please don't let us end on that.
So all I did is I told him I always wanted a son. That's how I responded.
Okay.
So,
he could do worse emulating you, I guess.
I mean, like I said, we've got the pretty low bar, but
yeah,
it's baby steps.
Yeah. I just want to encourage, both boys and girls his age, he's setting a really good example. So yeah. I just think that, if you see some of your friends all of a sudden, you're like, oh, dang, dude, this guy looks great. He's getting jacked and, and, that's just a good role model for other kids.
Yeah. Especially like your teenage years, like instilling healthy lifestyle. And,
I talked about this before. The military is having, 77% of their applicants, they have to give waivers for now because they can't get people that are actually in shape that pass the general standards anymore in that age group.
Yeah.
So, it's great to see someone like him. He's become an outlier in a good way.
Yeah.
So anyway, good on you, man. Good on you, Eli.
Well, that's it. Just comment, like, subscribe. We love comments. They help the algo.
They do.
Go boom, boom. Got any questions? grapplingwithpodcast@gmail. Message us.
And keep sending us some things you guys want to hear about because, otherwise you're going to leave it up to me.
Yeah. And you'll start lecturing about Rogaine and stuff.
And prune juice. And,
yeah. And then I'll start talking about my previous life, and that's never fun either. So.
Excellent.
Blow us up, Olivia.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Later.